The Global Child Protection Working Group, the international coordinating body for protecting girls and boys in humanitarian settings, has produced a video series on the minimum standards for child protection in humanitarian action. These minimum standards, also known as the CPMS, were developed through widespread interagency collaboration. They are one of the companions to the Sphere standards. This video examines Standard 9, Sexual Violence. For other installments in the series, please go to the CPWG's website. In every emergency situation, children, especially girls, experience various forms of sexual violence. In fact, the risk increases. Sexual violence is any form of sexual activity with a child by an adult or by another child who has power over the child. It includes rape, sexual touching, exposing children to pornography, prostitution, and much more. That violence may come from strangers or armed actors, but often it comes from people they know and those who are supposed to protect them, their family members, teachers, community leaders. The consequences are wide-ranging and affect their physical, emotional, and social well-being. It may be very difficult for a child to talk about or even understand what they have experienced. Indeed, they may feel unsafe, especially if the perpetrator is someone they know.
And also assume that sexual violence is taking place and that is a serious and life-threatening protection issue, regardless of the presence of concrete and reliable evidence.
What is essential for child protection actors is to create an environment of safety, care, and comfort for a child who's disclosed sexual violence. Children who are already existing in very, very difficult circumstances, whether it's a natural disaster, whether there's conflict and war surrounding them, who then have the additional experience of sexual violence, are very fragile. They are in need of very important care.
Standard 9 states, girls and boys are protected from sexual violence, and survivors of sexual violence have access to age-appropriate information as well as a safe, responsive, and holistic response. It emphasizes that both response and prevention are important components of our work on sexual violence against girls and boys. The key actions remind you to assess and identify which children are particularly vulnerable in your context, such as those with mental or physical disabilities, or who are separated from their parents or caregivers. Central to that work is understanding that we, as child protection and GBV actors, interact with child survivors impacts their ability to heal. Our interaction must be in line with the 10 overarching principles that guide the CPMS.
As a new child protection and emergencies worker, I can help in the healing process of a child survivor of sexual violence by believing in her or in him.
The attitude of the service provider, first of all, contributes so much to the healing process and the recovery process of the survivor. So to say, if we are compassionate and we are non-judgmental, we are trying to promote easy and quick healing. Judging might even be from the questions you ask a survivor. Just for instance, a person tells the story and mentions where she experienced the incident, it would be wrong for you to ask the survivor, but why didn't you go there? Such kind of questions are blaming and judgmental.
A new caseworker who is going to work with a child who is a survivor of sexual violence should have empathy and understanding of what the child has gone through, and in fact putting himself or herself in the child's shoes.
One of the most important and impactful things when that child first discloses that they've experienced sexual violence, sexual abuse, is to believe the child, is to fundamentally accept what the child says, believe them, reassure the child that it's not their fault, and create an environment of care, compassion, and safety for that child. When that trust is there, then a child will begin to feel safe to open up, to share more about their experience, which is fundamental for the helper to know because it's going to be essential for that helper to connect the child to needed services.
Girls and boys who experience sexual violence require a variety of services. These often include healthcare, psychosocial support, safety, or legal assistance. As a child protection staff, you should be aware of what services exist.
So understanding the resources and how you can use them to support the kind of service you are going to give this child is really, really important, and it's really practical. And then you may need to actually have some kind of an agreement. So when you eventually have to go there, they may provide you with very quick, fast track the service, make sure that the child is comfortable.
Service providers often make use of a referral pathway to quickly see which other services are available and appropriate for girl and boy survivors of sexual violence. It includes their location, hours of operation, and contact people. Service mapping is an important tool in building that pathway. It is done by consulting the community, visiting services to ask questions, talking to staff, and observing the environment. You do this to ensure that information entered into the pathway is accurate and up to date, and that the services offered are appropriate for girls and boys of different ages. It is vital that all humanitarian staff, no matter the sector, see themselves as playing a role in the support and protection of girls and boys who experience sexual violence. This may mean knowing how to offer immediate support to a child by listening to and believing them, and then connecting them to trained child protection or health staff for further support. Coordination between service providers is crucial in building the systems necessary to prevent sexual violence and to protect and care for children. It also increases the sustainability of these structures. Often it is child protection staff who ensure coordination mechanisms are in place. Indeed, failing to coordinate effectively can result in harm.
It is important that referral pathways are functional in an emergency, and these referrals should be confidential to ensure that the child survivor of sexual violence is not put to greater risks and will not be exposed to stigmatization and ridicule, and most importantly, to preserve their dignity as a person.
If we don't have a concrete and a very good referral pathway, we will be encouraging the abused child to keep silent. And then we will interview him. She will be referred to another office. Another interview, the same process. And it's very traumatic. It's very difficult for a child who has been abused to be asked by the same questions over and over again.
An emergency can feel overwhelming for everyone, including humanitarian staff. In addition to the heavy workload and stress, it is hard to bear witness to the suffering of individual children and families. Preparedness can help us cope and be more effective in our work. It might include ensuring coordination mechanisms and standard operating procedures are in place, as well as supporting community awareness or holding emergency-focused training.
In many cases, when you are new to the work, you tend to panic. So having this preparation before helps you to reduce the panic in you, and when you see it's a child, the suffering has a way of affecting you psychologically. So if you are prepared, you know your environment, you know the people you can actually work with, it's really helpful.
In the Caring for Child Survivors guidelines that UNICEF and the IRC created, we actually have a self-assessment that staff can use to really examine what beliefs and values are important for children, and to get a sense of areas that I'm still personally struggling with around values and beliefs that could impact how I provide a child care.
Helping child survivors of sexual violence is not the job of one person. It requires the time and energy of humanitarian and government staff from different sectors and agencies. We must work together as a team with clear roles and responsibilities.
None of these actors single-handedly can respond or maybe do something so quick. All the actors came together, they were able to sit and discuss best options, and that really made it so easier for us to know like who is doing what, and also at the same time where to refer these cases. And most importantly, at the end, we're able to refer this child, and this child was able to get that psychosocial support.
In this context that I was working in, where we had both child protection staff in the community working and staff working on cases of gender-based violence, is for those two agencies together to develop an agreement or a really explicit understanding of how they work together. I found that Oftentimes it was confusing to know which agency should kind of be the lead case management agency for a child. So I think it's really helpful for the child protection and the gender-based violence actors in that particular setting to talk with one another and maybe have a more in-depth conversation about how they want to work together to help a child.
It's becoming very clear there are many different things we can do with the different sectors. What is really important is working with them over time so that this becomes like a natural reaction to them, that if something happens to a child, they're able to provide the support without you being there.
As we have seen, every day, girls and boys experience sexual violence. This is always exacerbated in an emergency. Through your efforts and care, you can do something to help them begin to heal. Other installments in this series focus on how to use the CPMS and on the specific standards for addressing needs. The CPWG provides support for applying the standards, such as mainstreaming briefs, guidance on contextual adaptation, and training packages. For more information, please go to cpwg.net/minimum-standards.